They say blood is thicker than water. They're wrong. Blood is just a fluid. Trust, on the other hand, is a structure. It's a house. And my house was burned to the ground, not by an enemy, but by my own family. My cousin, Vanessa, used a wedding invitation as a weapon, and the Child Protective Services as her accomplice. She weaponized the state against me, turning my specialized care for my autistic son into a narrative of gross neglect. She succeeded, for a time. They took my son, Mike. They state kidnapped him. This isn't a story about forgiveness or healing the wound. This is a story about meticulously documenting the injury, amputating the infected limb, and cauterizing the wound with cold, hard, procedural fire. Our life before the fire was a symphony of structure. My son, Mike, is 7. He is loving, he is brilliant, and he has moderate autism. Our world was built to give him peace. We had visual schedules on the walls, a sensory corner with soft lighting, and a specific ritual for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My entire existence was oriented around his well-being, not just his survival, but his happiness. The smell of his lavender shampoo during his bath, the specific high-pitched hum he'd make when he was lining up his toy cars, the soft, predictable weight of his head on my lap. These were the anchors of my life. I wasn't just his father, I was his interpreter, his advocate, and his safest place. Our home was a fortress built against a world that is too loud, too bright, and too chaotic for him. Every decision was made with his needs in mind. This is what the inexperienced, the ignorant, would never understand. The mattress on his floor? It wasn't poverty. It was a recommendation from his developmental pediatrician, Dr. Chen, because Mike is a restless roller and could be injured falling from a standard frame. The locks on the kitchen cabinets? Not a prison, but a barrier between him and household chemicals, a basic safety measure for a nonverbal child with pica. My life was a meticulously constructed, doctor-approved environment of protective love. I naively believed that was a recognizable, defensible state. The rehearsal dinner was the first crack. My cousin Vanessa, the bride. The wedding was family-focused, she'd insisted. The church was quiet, cavernous, the air thick with the scent of old wood and lilies. Mike was humming, his happy sound, holding my hand. Suddenly, Vanessa stopped. She turned, and she shrieked. Not a yell, a primal piercing sound that echoed off the stone. He's ruining it. Can't you control him? Why is he even here? Every guest, every family member, turned to stare. I saw the judgment, the pity, the contempt. I felt the heat rise in my own neck, but I swallowed the rage. For Mike. I just picked him up, whispered, "We're okay, buddy," and walked out, her shriek following us down the aisle. I couldn't let her erase him. I was humiliated, but Mike deserved to be represented. I went to the reception, alone. I sat in the back. During the speeches, when the microphone was passed, I stood. I didn't make a scene. I just said, Mike couldn't be here, but he wanted to send a message. I played a simple 30-second audio file I'd pre-recorded. It was Mike, practicing for days, his sweet voice clearly saying, "Congratulations, Vanessa. I hope you are happy." Just that. Quiet. Dignified. I watched her from across the room, the tight reptilian smile that didn't reach her eyes, the way her knuckles whitened on her champagne flute. I thought I had scored a small moral victory. I didn't realize I had just armed a terrorist. The next day, a Monday, the knock came. It wasn't a police knock, not aggressive. It was a dull, bureaucratic thud. A woman in a cheap blazer, and a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Child Protective Services. My blood didn't just run cold. It froze. "Mr. Williams, we've received a report of concern regarding the welfare of your child." The words were sterile, robotic. I tried to smile, to explain. "A report? From who? There must be a terrible mistake. Please come in." The naivety, even then, is staggering to look back on. I still thought reason mattered. I still thought the truth was a shield. The woman, the agent, walked into my son's life and saw only a crime scene. Her pen made a dry, scratching sound on her clipboard. It's a sound I still hear in my nightmares. She pointed at the floor mattress. "Where is his bed?" I began to explain. "That is his bed. His pediatrician recommended it for his safety. He has autism. I have the letter." She cut me off, her eyes flat and incurious. "And the cabinets? Why are they locked?" I was scrambling, pulling files from my desk, my voice getting higher. "It's a standard safety precaution. He's nonverbal. Dr. Chen, here, look. I was babbling, holding out the proof. She didn't look. She just kept writing. Mr. Williams, I'm not seeing evidence of a safe home environment, she said, her voice devoid of any human emotion. A mattress on the floor, locked cabinets. These are indicators of gross neglect. I just stared at her. Neglect? This is the opposite of neglect. This is specialized, medically advised care. But she wasn't listening. She was just a cog in a machine, and my cousin had pulled the lever. She turned to her partner. We're initiating an emergency removal. The child is not safe here. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This wasn't happening. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. I was a good father. Everyone knew I was a good father. They brought Mike out. He was holding his favorite plush, a blue triceratops, confused by the strangers. He saw my face, my panic, and his own fear started to build. He reached for me. Daddy, the man stepped between us. It's better if you don't, sir. It'll just agitate him. They walked him out the door. I followed, numb. I watched them buckle my entire life into the back of an unmarked sedan. The click of the seatbelt, the final hollow thud of the car door closing. The car pulled away. My home, my fortress, was instantly rendered a silent, empty tomb. My identity as a protector, as a father, wasn't just fractured. It was annihilated on that sidewalk. The drive to the county holding facility was the longest I'll ever take. Every red light was a personal insult. Every slow driver a new enemy. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the vibrating, agonizing need to see him. I walked in, clutching the court order, its fresh ink still smelling slightly acidic. The place was sterile, cold, and smelled of disinfectant and sadness. A new specialist, a Dr. Ramirez, met me. His face was weary, but his eyes were sharp and, unlike the first agent, intelligent. He'd already read the judge's order and Elizabeth's entire file. Mr. Williams, he said, his voice low, on behalf of the department, I am profoundly sorry. This should never have happened. We are opening an internal investigation into the initial agent's conduct. I don't care about your investigation, I said, my voice flat, holding back the scream that was sitting in my chest. I care about my son. Where is he? Dr. Ramirez nodded, his expression pained. He led me down a hall, and there, in a small room, sitting on a brightly colored mat and staring blankly at a wall, was Mike. He was still in the clothes they took him in. He looked smaller, thinner. He wasn't humming. He was just silent. I said his name. Mike? His head snapped up. His eyes, vacant for a moment, suddenly focused. A light came back on. Daddy! He cried out. A raw, desperate sound, and he ran. He slammed into my legs so hard he almost knocked me over, wrapping his arms around me, his face buried in my shirt. I collapsed to my knees, holding the back of his head, and I just broke. All the coldness, the rage, the methodology, it shattered. I just wept into his hair, the familiar, sweet smell of him. We went home. Dr. Ramirez, to his credit, insisted on conducting the court-ordered home visit himself that afternoon. He didn't want this nightmare to drag on for one more second. He walked through our home, the crime scene. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He looked at the floor mattress. Perfectly appropriate, he murmured. He saw the cabinet locks. Standard safety. He saw the visual schedules. The sensory corner. Mike's weighted blanket. He turned to me, his face grim. Mr. Williams, this isn't just an appropriate home. This is an exemplary one. It is medically and developmentally a fortress of safety for this child. He wrote his report right there, at my kitchen table, officially closing the case and flagging Vanessa's name in their system as a malicious, non-credible reporter. Mike was home. He was safe. The first battle was over. For a week, Mike was a shadow. He barely left my side. He slept in my bed, his small hand gripping my shirt all night, terrified I would disappear. The silence was the worst. His happy, familiar hum was gone. He just sat and watched and waited. I put away the files. I cleaned the war room. I slowly, piece by piece, tried to rebuild our sanctuary. I didn't talk about it. I just existed. I made his favorite foods. We watched his favorite movies. I sat on the floor and built towers of blocks, just waiting for him to join me. The house felt haunted by what had happened. I was terrified the vibrant, happy boy I knew was gone, broken by the trauma, by the state-sanctioned kidnapping. Then, one morning, I was making pancakes. the familiar smell of batter and maple syrup filling the kitchen. I was humming, a stupid, tuneless song, just trying to fill the awful silence. And then, from the living room, I heard it, a small, tentative, high-pitched hum. It was his hum. I froze, my hand tightening on the spatula. I didn't turn. I didn't want to scare him. I just listened. It got stronger, more confident. I slowly peeked around the corner. He was there, on the floor, lining up his toy cars. Red, then blue, then green. The ritual. The old, familiar, beautiful ritual. He looked up, saw me, and gave me a small, shy smile. The relief was so profound, so sudden, it buckled my knees. My son was still in there. He was coming back. The victory was profound, but the war wasn't over. Vanessa, now abandoned by Thomas, who had filed for an immediate annulment, was spiraling. She showed up at my house, unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, her face puffy, her hair a mess. I opened the door just enough to block her entry. "Daniel," she started, her voice a sickly sweet, whining tone. I think we need to talk about this. Family is family. I think you've made your point, and..." Before I could tell her to get off my property, Mike came up behind me. He peeked around my leg. He saw her, and his face, his sweet, gentle face, hardened. He stepped out from behind me. He pointed a small, trembling finger right at her. He wasn't nonverbal in that moment. His rage, his fear, it gave him a voice I hadn't heard. "No," he said, his voice loud and clear. "You were mean. You were mean to my daddy. You were loud. You were scary." He almost never spoke in full sentences to strangers. Vanessa just stared, her mouth open. This wasn't the nonverbal, broken child she'd described to CPS. This was a little boy, accusing her. The pure, honest, unvarnished accusation from the very child she tried to erase. It did what my lawyers and all my evidence couldn't. It broke her. Her face crumpled. She didn't say a word. She just turned, stumbled down the walkway and left. Mike looked up at me. "She's bad, Daddy." I just picked him up. "Yeah, buddy, she is." The final salvo came from my mother. She called a family intervention. I almost didn't go. I was done. Amputated. But Elizabeth advised it. "Go," she said. "Not for them, for the record. Be there. Say nothing. Let the evidence speak." So I went. I sat at my mother's dining room table. The first time I'd been there in months. The air was thick with unshed tears and resentment. Vanessa was there, with her parents, my Uncle Charles, and my aunt. The rest of the family, aunts, uncles, cousins, sat around the table, their faces grim. My mother stood. "We are here," she said, her voice shaking, "to get to the truth." My Uncle Charles started. He tried to bluster. "Now, this has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Vanessa was just concerned." I didn't say a word. I just slid a file across the table to my mother. "Read it," I said. It was Dr. Ramirez's final report. She read it aloud. The words "exemplary care" and "medically appropriate" echoed in the silent room. Then she read the part about the malicious report and the internal investigation into the agent Vanessa had lied to. My uncle's face went from bluster to a blotchy, terrified red. Vanessa just stared at the table, her hair covering her face. Then a knock. The door opened, and Thomas walked in. Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "Thomas," my mother said, "thank you for coming." He looked at me, a brief, pained nod of acknowledgement. He turned to the family. "I was there," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying in the dead silence. I watched her make the call. It was after Daniel's speech. She was angry. She said he ruined her day. She lied to me. She lied to CPS. She convinced her own father, he said, looking at Charles, to commit perjury and file a second false report, feeding him lies about Daniel's home, which he hadn't even seen in a year. It was all a lie. A vendetta. The family just stared. The silent accomplices. The ones who had whispered. The ones who had looked at me with pity and contempt at the rehearsal. You could feel the entire structure of the family's narrative shifting. The weight of their judgment, which had been pressing on me for months, swung, slowly and irrevocably, onto Vanessa and her parents. My aunt, her own sister, looked at my mother. You knew he was a good father, Charles. You knew it. And you did this? You let her do this?" The family, finally seeing the unvarnished, documented truth, turned on them. The quiet whispers became angry, accusatory. The intervention became an execution. I stood up. The room went quiet. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't cried. I just looked at Vanessa, at my Uncle Charles, and at my aunt. "There is no misunderstanding," I said. My voice as cold and flat as a slab of marble. "There is no family. Not anymore. You tried to take my son. You tried to destroy my life. You weaponized the state because you were embarrassed at a party." I looked at Vanessa. "You are not my family. You are nothing to me." I turned to the rest of them. "I don't need your apologies. I don't want them. I'm done." I walked out of the house. The amputation was complete. My life now is quiet. It's peaceful. Mike and I have our fortress back. The wider family, awakened and deeply ashamed, slowly, cautiously, tried to bridge the gap. They didn't apologize. Instead, they learned. My mother sent me a book on sensory-friendly activities. My other cousins started inviting Mike to quiet-time playdates, not loud parties. They learned about his needs. They rallied around him, building a new, better community, one built on truth and evidence, not the fragile, toxic bonds of blood. My lawyer, Elizabeth, sent me a cease and desist letter she had served to Vanessa, barring her from ever contacting me or Mike again, backed by a threat of a civil suit that would bankrupt her. I heard, through the grapevine, what happened. Vanessa and her parents are pariahs, ostracized. My Uncle Charles lost his standing in the community, his reputation shattered by his own perjury. Vanessa, abandoned and unemployable, had to move away. I received this news with a complete, profound, and peaceful indifference. It didn't bring me joy. It didn't bring me closure. It was just information, like reading a weather report. My victory wasn't her destruction. My victory was sitting on the floor of my living room on a sunny Tuesday, watching my son line up his cars, red, blue, green, and hearing the beautiful, steady, peaceful sound of his hum. That was the only sound that mattered. The silence. That was the weapon they left behind. The suffocating, absolute silence of Mike's empty bedroom. I sat on his floor mattress, the one the agent had called neglect. I picked up his blue Triceratops, pressing it to my face, trying to find the last scent of him, the smell of lavender shampoo and boyish sweat. There was nothing, just the cold fabric. The despair wasn't a wave. It was a vacuum, sucking the air from my lungs, the strength from my bones. I didn't cry. Crying was a luxury. Crying meant you believed there was a different, better outcome. I was past that. I sat there for hours. The sun went down, painting the walls in a sickly orange, then gray, then black. The house was a tomb. My fortress. My crime scene. The agent's words echoed. Gross neglect. My meticulous doctor-advised care, twisted into a weapon. The rage, when it finally came, wasn't hot. It was ice. A cold, methodical, structural fury. They had used a system against me. I would use a system back. They had used lies. I would use an avalanche of truth. I wasn't a sad father. I was an architect, whose foundation had been attacked. I would rebuild, but not with love, with steel. I didn't sleep. I went to my office. I opened my laptop, the screen a blinding white in the dark. The first call wasn't to family. Family was the enemy. The first call was to the best, most ruthless, most expensive family lawyer I could find. A Google search. Best family law attorney specialized CPS defense. The name Elizabeth Race came up. Reviews described her as a scalpel. I called her emergency line at 3 a.m. She picked up on the second ring, her voice awake, sharp. Race. I told her the story, my voice flat, robotic, listing the facts, the floor mattress, Dr. Chen, the locks, the wedding, the removal. They took him 12 hours ago, I finished. Elizabeth was silent for a moment. I heard her typing. They weaponized his autism against you, she said. It wasn't a question. The agent was inexperienced, or malicious. Likely both. They have 72 hours to hold an emergency hearing. We have 60. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered a plan. I need $20,000 as a retainer. I need your son's entire medical file from Dr. Chen. I need every email, every report, every prescription. I will be at your house at 6 a.m. I transferred the money from my savings. The thud of my life savings evaporating was the first sound that felt like progress. At 5 a.m., I called Dr. Chen, Mike's developmental pediatrician. I woke him up. I didn't care. They took him, I said. CPS. They said the floor mattress and cabinet locks were neglect. The silence on the other end was heavy. then a sharp, furious intake of breath. They what? Daniel, I recommended those things personally. I wrote the letters. His indignation was a shot of adrenaline. I will be at that hearing, he said, his voice hard. I will bring his entire file. I will testify. This is not just an injustice. It's medical ignorance. It's malpractice by the state. I'll be there. My third call was to Morgan, my neighbor. She was a special ed teacher for the school district, a friend, someone who'd had Mike over for play dates with her own kids. She understood our world. She arrived at 5:30 a.m., still in her robe, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. She saw neglect, Morgan said, walking into Mike's room and touching the visual schedule on the wall. She saw this, and the sensory corner. Daniel, this is the model of a responsive home. She looked at me, her eyes hard. I'm testifying. I will bring curriculum standards. I will bring district-approved safety protocols. They want to see what neglect looks like? I'll show them. This is not it. At 6 a.m. sharp, Elizabeth Race arrived. She was a storm in a tailored suit. She didn't drink the coffee I offered. She just set up her laptop at my dining room table, turning my home into a war room. Okay, Daniel, she said, her eyes scanning everything. Walk me through the wedding. I recounted the rehearsal, the shriek, the humiliation, the quiet dignity of the audio message. She was enraged, I said. I saw it. This was revenge. Elizabeth nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Malicious report. Hard to prove, but it gives us motive. Now show me the house, exactly as the agent saw it. I gave her the tour of the crime scene. She took photos of everything. The floor mattress, the locks, the visual schedules, the weighted blanket, the soft lighting in the sensory corner. This is a fortress, she said, echoing my own thoughts. They sent a child welfare agent to do a building inspector's job, and they failed. She compiled the letters from Dr. Chen, the files from Morgan, my own detailed written logs of Mike's routines. We were building a mountain of paper, of evidence, of truth to drop on their heads. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal preparation. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just drank bitter black coffee that tasted like ash and engine oil. The house smelled like paper, printer ink, and stale fear. Elizabeth and I worked side by side, assembling a binder that was 6 inches thick. It contained Mike's entire life. Medical records, school reports, pediatrician letters, therapeutic recommendations, photos, timelines. We were not just defending me. We were putting their incompetence on trial. We were going to methodically, clinically, dismantle the state's case until nothing was left but the agent's ignorance and my cousin's malice. Elizabeth prepped me for the hearing. You will not get emotional, she commanded. You will not raise your voice. You will not talk about love. The court does not care about your love. It cares about facts. You are a methodical, responsible, compliant father. Your home is not a home. It is a medically advised environment. You will be calm. You will be precise. You will be cold. Let me be the anger. You will be the structure. You will be the stone they broke themselves against. I nodded, the ice in my veins hardening. She was right. My love was what they'd twisted. My cold, hard logic was what would save my son. I had to sleep. Elizabeth forced me. You're useless to me, exhausted Daniel. 2 hours. Go. I lay on my own bed, the house still suffocatingly quiet. I closed my eyes and saw Mike's face. Not his happy face. The confused, terrified face as they buckled him into that car. The image was a physical jolt, like touching a live wire. Sleep was impossible. I got up. I went back to the dining room. I reread every page in the binder, memorizing case numbers, dates, medical terms. I would not be confused. I would not be tripped up. I would be a machine of pure, factual recall. During our research, Elizabeth found something. Well, isn't this interesting? She turned her laptop around. Vanessa's wedding photos, posted publicly on social media by a guest. She told CPS it was an adults-only wedding, right? That your son's presence was an unacceptable disruption? I nodded. Look, she said, pointing to a photo. In the background of the reception, clear as day, were 2 other children, toddlers, in suits, running near the cake. So, Elizabeth said, a thin, cold smile touching her lips, it wasn't an adults-only event. It was a no autistic children event. This isn't just malice. It's discrimination. We were building a solid case, but Elizabeth was worried. A judge will see the evidence. They'll hear Dr. Chen. We'll likely get him back. But malicious report is a high bar. It's your word against hers. She'll say she was genuinely concerned by what you told her. It's a he said, she said on motive. We needed something to tip it. Something to prove, beyond doubt, that her call was retaliation. I felt that cold knot of despair tighten. We had the truth, but we didn't have the proof of her intent. This is the part that still feels unreal. The symbolic break didn't come from me. It came from him, Thomas, Vanessa's new husband. He called my cell. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't answer. Daniel? His voice was low, agitated. It's Thomas. Vanessa's husband. I said nothing. I saw what happened at the rehearsal, and I heard what she did after. She's not the person I thought she was. She's bragged about it to her parents, how she taught you a lesson. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you want, Thomas? I asked, my voice flat. I'm at a hotel, he said, his voice cracking. I can't be in that house with her. Look, I don't know if this helps, but at the reception after your speech, she was furious. She walked away, made a call. I thought she was calling her mother. I was taking a video of the reception hall, and I caught her. My blood stopped. What did you catch? She was in the corner, he said. I have her on video. You can hear her. She's on the phone. She's saying, "Oh, my cousin Daniel Williams. I'm reporting child neglect. Yes, 24 Maple Drive. He's unfit. The child is in danger. Daniel, the video is time-stamped. It's 5 minutes after your audio message played. 5 minutes." He was quiet. I'll send it to you. Do what you have to with it. I'm so sorry. He hung up. A second later, my phone buzzed. A video file. I opened it. There it was. The reception hall, the music, the laughter, and in the corner, my cousin Vanessa. Her face a mask of pure reptilian spite. Her voice clear, reading my address to a state agency. The smoking gun wasn't just a gun. It was a cannon. It was the entire, undeniable, time-stamped proof of her malicious, retaliatory intent. It was the key. It was the weapon. I forwarded it to Elizabeth. Her reply was almost instant. A single sentence. We just won. The relief I felt wasn't joy. It was the cold, satisfying click of the final puzzle piece sliding into place. The machine I was building was finally complete. This wasn't just a defense anymore. This was an execution. The courthouse was old, the air thick with the smell of floor wax, cheap coffee, and desperation. It was a place for broken families. I wore a suit. I felt cold, calm. Dr. Chen was there, his face grim, clutching a file. Morgan was there, looking like she was ready to go to war. Elizabeth was at my side, a silent, coiled spring of energy. Then I saw her, Vanessa, across the hall, with her father, my Uncle Charles. She was dressed in a demure conservative dress, her face arranged in an expression of concerned sadness. The performance, it made me sick. We were called into a small, sterile hearing room. A judge who looked exhausted sat behind a high bench. A CPS lawyer, looking unprepared, sat at the other table. Vanessa and my uncle sat in the back. "This is an emergency removal hearing for Michael Williams," the judge said, his voice monotone. The CPS lawyer stood and read the report. "Your Honor, the agent found the child in a home with indicators of neglect, a mattress on the floor, locked cabinets. The father was defensive." Elizabeth stood. "Your Honor, we are not here to discuss indicators. We are here to discuss facts." For the next hour, she systematically, clinically, dismantled them. She called Dr. Chen. He testified, his voice booming with medical authority, that the mattress and locks were his specific written recommendations. He called the agent's report medically ignorant and dangerous. Elizabeth submitted the letters. The judge's expression began to shift from boredom to sharp attention. Elizabeth called Morgan, who testified that my home was a model of responsive, specialized care. Then, she entered the photos of the other children at the adults-only wedding. "This wasn't about a disruption, Your Honor. This was discrimination." The CPS lawyer was scrambling, looking at his files, lost. Finally, Elizabeth said, "And as to the concerned report from the cousin," she played the video, Thomas's video, on a large screen. The judge watched, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. We watched Vanessa's face, clear as day, her voice echoing in the courtroom. "Reporting child neglect. He's unfit. The timestamp was visible in the corner. The judge didn't even deliberate. He slammed his gavel. This emergency removal is canceled. Effective immediately. The child is to be returned to his father. He turned to the CPS lawyer. Your department has been used. You've been manipulated. He turned his gaze to the back of the room, to Vanessa and my uncle. His eyes were chips of ice. And as for you, he said to Vanessa, your conduct is a disgrace. You have perjured yourself to a state agency and traumatized a child. This court is referring your case to the district attorney for review. Get out of my courtroom. Vanessa's sad face dissolved into shock. Defeated. Exposed. It was the first crack in her world. It wouldn't be the last.